directed the Justice Department to adopt a zero-tolerance policy to revoke federal firearms licenses from those who committed, quote, willful violations of the law. That same month, ATF updated its internal best practices guide to state, quote, ATF will, absent extraordinary circumstances, initiate proceedings to revoke the license of any dealer that has committed a willful regulatory violation of the Gun Control Act for specified violations, close quote. These willful violations now include purposefully broad classifications like, quote, falsifying documents and failing to maintain records needed for successful firearms tracing, and would essentially allow the ATF to revoke the licenses of FFLs for simple technical and non-material paperwork violations. And ATF is zealously doing just that. The year after the zero-tolerance policy went into effect, ATF revoked over 90 licenses, more than any year since 2006. Last year, that number jumped to 157 FFL revocations. The year before zero tolerance went into effect, there were just 40 revocations. To be sure, the Gun Control Act authorizes the ATF to inspect FFLs to ensure they are compliant with record-keeping requirements and all other applicable laws and regulations. But that is so the government can ensure that there are no illegal firearms transfers occurring, not for revoking licenses for simple paperwork violations. We've talked to some of the affected FFLs. We've even talked to some who beat the ATF in court and were able to keep their license. They told us it cost over $150,000 in fees to keep their license. There's no way the average small business can afford that much in legal and consulting fees, and ATF knows this. And the data shows this brazen scheme is working. The number of voluntary business closures post-inspection has risen sharply from 24 in 2021 to 69 in 2022 and to 80 last year. This is exactly what the left wants. Democrats and Joe Biden have been trying to take guns away from Americans for years. If they can't take the FFLs away, they are going to limit the number. If they can't take the guns away, they're going to limit the number of places where law-abiding Americans can go purchase their firearms. Today, we'll examine the actions by ATF that led to the untimely and unnecessary death of Brian Malinowski. At this time, I want to offer my condolences to the members of Mr. Malinowski's family. Some of them are here with us today. We're also joined by Congressman Hill, who I mentioned earlier, who represents Mr. Malinowski's and his family and has sought justice on their behalf. In the early morning hours of March 19, 2024, armed ATF agents arrived at the Malinowski family home in at least 10 vehicles to execute a search warrant. According to the warrant, the ATF alleged that Mr. Malinowski was selling firearms without a license. Footage from the Malinowski's doorbell camera shows ATF agents approaching the house with riot shields, subsequently disabling the camera to prevent their conduct from being recorded. Upon hearing the commotion and fearful of a home intrusion, Mr. Malinowski awoke and prepared to defend his family. Mr. Malinowski encountered what he and his wife believed to be home intruders. An exchange of gunfire ensued. Mr. Malinowski was shot in the head, and he died from his wounds 2 days later. The circumstances of Mr. Malinowski's death raised questions about whether the ATF followed proper protocol during the execution of this search warrant. DOJ policy and President Biden's executive order 14074 requires ATF agents, including those who conducted the search warrant on the Malinowski family home, to wear active body-worn cameras during the execution of that warrant. The department, however, has since confirmed to the Malinowski family that ATF agents were not wearing body cameras during the raid, a clear violation of the department policy. It is also unclear whether ATF agents complied with Justice Department policy on no-knock entries. In explaining the rationale for this policy, Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco noted that, quote, because of the risk posed to both law enforcement and civilians during the execution of no-knock warrants, it is important that this authority be exercised in only the most compelling circumstances. Furthermore, Ms. Monaco directed the use of no-knock entries should be restricted to instances in which an agent has reasonable grounds to believe that at the time of the warrant, that the warrant is sought, that knocking and announcing the agent's presence would create an imminent threat of physical violence to the agent or to another person. It's not clear if the raid was a no-knock encounter because, in part, the ATF agents disabled the Malinowski's home camera. ATF is yet to explain why it resorted to a risky pre-dawn entry of Mr. Malinowski's home when it could have peacefully executed the warrant while he was away from his residence. I think that's a huge question. But the ATF wanted.
So, folks, this is Kenny with Just the Right Angle. I am here live doing a broadcast on this important issue. I have talked briefly about this incident before, but recently, turns out Malinowski's lawyer was scheduled to testify earlier today. So that's the judiciary hearings that you can look at and see what happened with that. I know there were some other comments were made by leftists that basically claim that they don't really care. They've already assumed that that the Malinowski shooting was justified. And they're also claiming that, well, the other killings by police, mainly of Breonna Taylor, were somehow unjustified. And that's typical leftist ideology. If you just go to KATV, they deliberately only have that section of the leftists claiming, talking about the ATF, talking about the Breonna Taylor shooting. They don't bother to care to inform you of the intro and the basic details of this, let alone any of the statements by Bud Cummins. Matter of fact, I can even go to Facebook and show you what I'm talking about. Oops. Facebook, of course, is run by Mark Zuckerberg, and it's leftist of in itself. But the sad thing is your local media oftentimes has a slant, and they will oftentimes hide certain issues from you or put a certain point of view that they think you should adhere to. In other words, they will set what's known as a narrative. And so here's the post if you go to KETV, and I'll just play this.
Family. While an investigation is ongoing it's inappropriate to be drawing conclusions before the results of an investigation are released. We do know from affidavits from the court that it was alleged that Mr. Malinowski was a mass gun trafficker. And we know that some of the guns he
So this is what this person proceeds to do. She proceeds to first say, you can't make any assumptions, then proceeds to make assumptions. And she does this in a deliberate manner so that she gets her side of the story and says, don't you dare say your side of the story. This, by the way, is happening in another court case, which we'll talk about. And this is often a tactic used by leftists when they want to get their way. When it comes to a legal proceeding, they can go all over mass media and repeat their agenda, but you can't dare say your side.
sold were used to commit crimes. We know that ATF agents were serving a legitimate search warrant. Beyond that, we await the results of an investigation.
No, that's what the investigation is, whether or not it was legitimate. So when this lady, Miss Plaskett, claims that we know this was legitimate, that is a lie. That is an assumption, the very thing she just said not to do. And of course, KATV Channel 7 is only showing this section. So you don't get to see the rest of the hearing. Here's what I'm going to do, because I'm honest with you. I'm going to show you the actual whole hearing right now. And I'm going to put it on my chats so you can see it. If I can get to it. Oh, wait, I got to go Rumble by another means. And you can look at the whole hearing. And like I said, I just played the intro. And you can decide for yourself. But again, when you get, this is how the left lies to people. They leave out they put up front and center their narrative. And you have to dig to find any other point of view or the basic facts of this. You have to, and they know that most people won't bother to do it. They'll just look at the headline. So there it is, linked to the whole hearing. So if nothing else, know this, and this is yet another example of how the left manipulates things. Simple thing, like just, they could have just put the intro, they could have put a section of Bud Cummings when he speaks, but no, they don't bother to do that. They only put this section from Miss Polanski or whatever her name is, or Plaskett, doesn't matter.
And this committee shouldn't seek to influence that. Let's not be mistaken. Republicans are not here today because they're concerned about the tragic loss of life during a police raid. You know why I know that? Because they have not uttered a word about a Florida deputy shooting and killing Senior Airman Roger Fortsman in his apartment just a week ago.
Actually, some Republicans have. And I'm sure if it were brought before an investigation, she would find a way to somehow not care. Yeah, we have. I know a lot of people have talked about the shooting of the airman. We demand all shootings be investigated. And for this leftist to sit there and claim otherwise is an absolute lie.
You know why I know that? Because they don't say anything. They don't say the name Breonna Taylor, who in 20.
Oh, the name Breonna Taylor? Well, Breonna Taylor was a drug dealer who got shot in a legitimate warrant, who was with her, I don't know, boyfriend, hookup, whatever it was, that was a violent felon.
2020 was shot and killed in her home through an inappropriate police raid. They don't want to talk about the gun violence impacting communities.
Yeah, we do talk about the gun violence that impacts communities. And we talk about how useless anti-gun laws work, how they fail. We have these gun-free zones. It makes mass shootings even worse. When they have these inner city neighborhoods like Memphis and Chicago and Little Rock, and how most of the gun crime is mainly with weapons that are either stolen or obtained another way illegally. And then used by oftentimes people that repeat criminals who should have been never out in the streets in the first place. Yeah, we do talk about what they call so-called gun violence, which is actually just regular violence, by the way. Not that these idiots care, not that she cares. Anyway, let me go through the rest of the hearing a little bit. Because and Jim Jordan's going to talk a little bit about this stuff, and then he's going to, well, here's this lady. Well, there's French Hill, who could this is actually technically my congressman. He is from the 2nd district where this person was shot. Now, of course, if French Hill really cared about this and other issues, he would defund the ATF. And he would be one of the few, he would join the Republican Freedom Caucus and doing things like cutting the budget on these unconstitutional organizations. But let me see what he says here, because I honestly don't know. I have not seen this.
after ATF agents raided their family home in the early hours of March 19th. This pre-dawn raid resulted in a deadly shootout in which ATF agents shot and ultimately fatally wounded Brian Malinowski, as I said, a friend and constituent of mine, in his own home. And Mayor Malinowski is a widow at the hands of gun violence by her own government. Nobody knows more about this case than Bud Cummings. I'm glad he's here to answer the committee's questions and help get answers for the family and the American public. Thank you, Chairman Jordan, for your leadership in holding this hearing, and I hope through your efforts we can obtain well-deserved answers to what led to the tragic death of Brian Malinowski. Brian's widow, family, and the public deserve a full accounting from the ATF. I thank the chairman and I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. I thank you for your work in bringing this terrible situation to our attention. Thank you very much. We also have Mr. Andrew Graham. Mr. Graham is the founder and CEO of Graham Industry Advisors, a veteran-owned consulting firm that advises the firearms industry on compliance with the Gun Control Act and the Safe Explosives Act. He previously served as the ATF Deputy Assistant Director of Field Operations and Deputy Assistant Director of Enforcement Programs and Services. Mr. Ryan Kleckner is an attorney who specializes in federal firearms law and the Bureau.
I don't care what these people necessarily, maybe they do say something important, but honestly, I don't really have much faith in a former ATF director. Let me see, is this, so this is Bud Cummings himself. This is what KTV could have played, but didn't. Let me see a little bit of footage from him.
Has been very engaged and concerned about the death of Brian Malinowski and his district. And we really appreciate his help bringing attention to this tragedy. My name is Bud Cummins. I'm an attorney for Brian Malinowski's family, and I'm a former United States attorney from the Eastern District of Arkansas. I want to tell you a little bit, Mr. Chairman, about Brian Malinowski. Until 2 months ago, Brian was the executive director of the Bill and Hillary Clinton National Airport in Little Rock. He was 53 years old. He and his wife, who's present with us today, Mayor, celebrated their 25th anniversary last December, and he had many good friends. He grew up in Pennsylvania with his brother and his two sisters, and he wanted to be a fighter pilot, but he didn't have the eyesight. So instead, he went and got his became a certified flight instructor, got a college degree, and went into the airport management industry. And he had several stops along the way in Pennsylvania, Florida, but in El Paso, Texas, is where he met his wife, Mare. And as I said, they've been married 25 years. He found his way to Little Rock and eventually was named the executive director of our airport. By all accounts, he's a very good in his profession. Our airport is one of, I think, 9, I've heard a few different numbers, less than 12 in the country that's debt-free. And that, I think, may be a concept that's strange here in Congress, but I think that represents some good management. Brian was also a lifelong collector. As a child, he started collecting coins. He had various hobbies. He was that guy. I've been to their home and seen books this thick about coin collecting currencies, and about card playing. He studies card playing, and he tried his hand at competitive card tournaments. About 6 years ago, Brian's father gave him his gun collection, and that sparked a new collection interest in Brian. And since then, he has become also a gun collector. And he found at gun shows, he found other people who shared his enthusiasm and his interest in not only guns, but in coins and other artifacts that you'll find at a gun show. He'd set up a table on weekends occasionally, and he'd display some of his guns, and he'd display his coins, and he would buy and sell and trade with other collectors. It is legal to buy and sell and trade firearms without a federal firearms license if you are a collector or a hobbyist. At some point, ATF suspected that Brian Malinowski may have crossed a very murky line, and he was no longer a hobbyist. Because of that, ATF concluded that he was required to buy a $200 FFL, federal firearms license, before he sold any more guns. One thing is certain: his family and his friends and all his work colleagues would all guarantee you, if they were here today, that he loved his career and he loved being in the airport management business. And if anybody had ever suggested to him that his weekend hobby was in any way threatening that, he would have immediately been hands off. But nobody told him. Instead, ATF launched a criminal investigation into Brian. They researched his background. They put a tracker on his car. They put tails on him and surveilled him.
Wow.
And soon they obtained a search warrant to search his home. By the time they obtained the warrant, they knew a lot about Brian. They knew he worked in a secure environment at the airport. They knew he had lived a law-abiding life with absolutely no criminal history. And they knew he lived at home with his wife and his 2 dogs. And they kept a very regular schedule.
Which means, just like with David Koresh and many of these other incidences where there ends up being a shooting, like the Weaver, Ruby Ridge, they could have simply either arrested him in an area where there'd be minimal violence, or better yet, just serve a warrant in the mail, a piece of paper where he would likely have shown up to contest it. And that's, again, another detail you won't get from KTV Channel 7. I'm going to actually cut this section right here. I think what I'll do is I'll cut this section and I'll post it on KTV7's website. Because apparently, again, they have failed. If you go to KTV7 or type in Bud Cummins and you see the headline, KTV only has the small section of the leftist that I talked about earlier. At least they did. You saw it earlier. Here's a quote regarding this. I'll share this just for a second. This is a quote from Bud Cummins. 1,000 options that would be safer than what they did. If it's okay what they did to Brian Malinowski, we should all go to bed shivering every night out of fear of our own government, he says. And that's not the way the system's designed. And it looks like this may have been politically motivated. What they may have been doing is trying to make a stunt so that this clown right here can read lines about how he wants universal background checks. If you shouldn't go here, you'll see all kinds of broadcasts. But again, I wanted to highlight was the KTV headline on their Facebook page, which only shows the small section mentioned by the lady. And then some useless poll. This is in, this is from April 22nd. And here's the other person that was shot. And again, we want all investigations, we want all shootings investigated, but just like with Michael Brown, when it's blatantly obvious that it is a thug that needed to be shot and put down, and they were, we don't glorify them. So there's no need to glorify hands up, don't shoot Michael Brown. Hands up, don't shoot, by the way, is an absolute lie. There's no need to glorify, Breonna Taylor, and certainly no need to glorify George I Can't Breathe Floyd. St. Floyd of fentanyl was a thug who should have never been out in the streets at all, who should have never been in public. And yet was so. And speaking of possible shootings, I can't seem to play this video, but I'm just going to show it if I can get to the headline of it. But apparently the government officials that were sent to raid Donald Trump's house were also giving shoot to kill orders. Let me see if I could find that live stream. And a few people have talked about that. Here's one person. I don't know who this person is here, the Daily Show. Yeah, they just now discovered that the FBI had use of lethal force at Mar-a-Lago. I don't know how long this
If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And, which is more, you'll be a man, my son.
It's just an ad. But anyway, you can look at different broadcasts about this, but I did not know this until I actually started researching this was going on. But the FBI apparently had use of lethal force for the raid on Mar-a-Lago, which means if Donald Trump or his relatives had been there and there had been a shooting, they could have possibly ended up shooting, wounding, or even killing a former president over what appears to be a sham investigation. For those that don't know, Mar-a-Lago was an attempt to seize what was supposed to be classified documents that Trump had allegedly shared with other people. It turns out that is an absolute fraud. In fact, a lot of classified material was planted or placed in a way to look like it was something that Trump had done illegally. And just like the other court cases, it turns out it's falling apart. Just like the incident regarding Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen, all these attempts to take Trump out are just falling flat on their face. Hey, Mister. Hey, Maven. Welcome to the Podbean. And rightfully so, because they're sham trials. They're third world banana republic attempts that they use the court system that stops somebody from running for office. I know in the Nicaragua, where my mom came from, the communist dictator Daniel Ortega, what he does is if you're a political opponent, they'll falsely accuse you of drugs and then put you in a jail and basically throw away the key. You're never given due process, just like the J6 people. They'll just take away your right to due process, and that's it. You're gone. And it's probably a tactic that's used in multiple other places. Of course, if you're a political opponent, in some instances, if they can't kill you, they'll just jail you. And one of the other tactics that they're going to do, I've seen this. We've already basically seen this with the, what is it called? Red flag laws, is they'll declare you mentally insane. You'll be accused of being not mentally fit to be in public. Red flag laws basically can do that regarding guns. And that's resulted in people getting killed too. There's a guy in Maryland who his ex-wife didn't like him and decided to call the police, said he's crazy, and they came to take his guns, and a shootout happened and ended up killing a guy. And there's been attempts to put red flag laws here in the state of Arkansas. Matter of fact, there may even be some cities here that may be doing that. You constantly have to watch out for that stuff. Don't think that because your state is 70-80% Trump, and maybe you have a conservative congressman, that in any way, shape, or form you're safe from this kind of stuff, from DEI or your kid getting an indecent library book or something like that. These leftists, globalists are everywhere. You want to stop Charles Schwab and Bill Gates and Hillary. You want to see Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden and the Biden crime family be thrown in jail. You need to get rid of the globalists in your neck of the woods. And speaking of which, on a more local level, Little Rock, North Little Rock, and probably several other cities are having tax increases. They're going to try to push for tax increases in November. Now, they used to be able to sneak in tax increases in special elections. They would schedule these on like Valentine's Day or a few days before Christmas. And they would do so deliberately to minimize voter turnout. And sadly, thanks to the efforts of the Chamber of Commerce and some fake Republicans, that process was allowed to go on for several years. And in reality, the primary election to remove James Sturch up in northern Arkansas area from the Arkansas Senate was over that main issue. So there is a 2024, the city of Little Rock is going to push for a sales tax increase. They tried this, I think, was it 2021 or 2022? It's a few years ago they tried to do this. And I myself to buy anything, gas, food, clothing, you'll get hit with a tax increase, more money. And this money is going to be used for, it's supposed to be used for some infrastructure, supposedly, but a lot of it is going to be used for stupid pet projects, like the zoo, like some parks. And sadly, they have the ability to tie these things together where they can tie in fixing the police department with a stupid solar panel farm. Or in order to fix the fire station, we got to have a water park so we can compete with Silver Dollar City or Branson or who knows what else. Or we got to get this fountain. I heard in the city of Cabot, they had a picture of a fountain in, I think, Fort Worth, Texas. And they said, well, this is what we want. So we can, have this nice place for millennial to hang out and attract these supposed tech companies. You'll also hear the acceptance of DEI and even the LGBT agenda for that same reason. No. Supposedly, businesses don't want to make money. They want to be run around with. They want to be leftists that can be taxpayer funded. Anyway, the next meeting that's coming up is May 29th, 6 p.m. at St. Mark Baptist Church on 12th Street. Again, this is for hearings regarding the Little Rock, the attempt to raise taxes in Little Rock. After these hearings, they'll try to campaign to push for this. Little Rock is also a de facto sanctuary city, as you can see here in this their website. Their website's in English and in Spanish. There's a reason for that. Even though it's not an official sanctuary city like Chicago or New York, where they're openly bragging about it, they do give IDs to illegals. And you can see here, this is what he's pushing for: Parks and Recreation Master Plan. This is a standard leftist tactic to not do anything about crime, to not do anything about infrastructure, to maybe fix a little bit of roads and streets if they're nice neighborhoods, especially if they're ones that are where the folks like the Chamber of Commerce and the government officials live. Those streets will get repaired. I know North Hills Boulevard up there in North Little Rock often gets repaid, while the streets in front of the Boys and Girls Club and the place over in Silver City Courts in North Little Rock gets ignored. Speaking of which, North Little Rock is also having a millage tax. Sorry for those of you who are looking at this, you didn't see the screen here. This is the hearings here for, and they may have some. Hopefully, they'll have some other hearings. Now, again, even if you're not a Little Rock resident, you need to do everything in your power to oppose this, because, again, a lot of people buy stuff from Little Rock. Gas is usually the best. Usually, Little Rock's the best place to get gas. And with this sales tax increase, it's just going to make things worse. So do everything you can to campaign. I have managed the campaigns of the defeats of multiple tax increases. I'm not sure if I'm going to or not, but I may see if I could do that. But that's one of many battles to fight. North Little Rock is supposedly having a millage tax increase as well. They actually scheduled one years ago on Valentine's Day that I campaigned against. I was not able to defeat that. The result was North Little Rock was turned into this massive Taj Mahal school where they did a lot of fancy buildings, a lot of electronics, but they fail horribly in academia. And now they're trying to push for another tax increase. So they lied to you once before, and they're going to lie to you again. So campaigning those, if they're there's a tax increase going on. I have heard of a possibility of one being presented for Star City, mainly to fix the water tower, but I don't know if that's been scheduled yet. But if you know of a tax increase in a little town or a county millage rate, some kind of little thing they're trying to sneak past folks, let me know so I can let others know and maybe even work on some possible ways to campaign against that. Because we need to stop these. There is absolutely no reason in this economy with especially with the excess surplus that Arkansas has. Arkansas was supposed to be a balanced budget, but we have actually overtaxed us, and we're now in a multi-billion-dollar surplus that we have that really needs to go back to the taxpayers before our government officials find something stupid to spend it on, like a $20,000 podium. And yes, so for those who don't know, there was a scandal involving Sarah Huckabee Sanders regarding Podiumgate. Long story short, she tried to use taxpayer funds to hire a consulting firm for her possible run for president or a higher office. Got caught with it thanks to the Freedom of Information Act. She tried to sabotage the Freedom of Information Act, partially successful. There is a ballot initiative to fix the Freedom of Information Act, also known as FOIA. If you see that one, sign that one. Basically, don't sign any others. Oh, I'm getting an update on it, Vince. There's a group called Arkansas Transparency and Government Group called Arkansas TIG. Joe McCutcheon, if you type in that name, you'll see information about him. But they're going around places gathering signatures for that. That's pretty much the only ballot initiative I would sign. There's one for recreational marijuana, which, as we know, turns people into even worse druggies than they already are. Don't sign that one. Do not sign the one that's basically for murdering children. They're calling it the Arkansas Limited Government Group because they're cowardly deceivers and they have to trick people into signing their ballot initiative. That is one that will put on the ballot the chance to murder the unborn and nullify all the pro-life laws that people like me and others have fought for. And then there's another one to get rid of Arkansas Learns and put power back into the hands of big education. Arkansas Learns is not by all means perfect, but it is far better and a vast improvement over what we have. And to wrap things up, just a reminder, there is the Republican Party of Arkansas State Convention happening in Rogers, Arkansas. It is being scheduled there at that location to minimize turnout. The Rhino consultant class, the uniparty globalists that are infested the Republican Party, such as Chris Caldwell and Impact Management, are trying to keep people from going to this. So if you are a delegate, I believe the deadline to be a delegate for this has already passed. Your county committee should have already done through all the process to elect them. Try to attend this. If you know about this event and you're like, we really need to make a change here, find those who are delegates and see if they need help in getting up here to Rogers, if a place to stay, drive them over at money for gas. Northwest Arkansas is a nice place to visit, especially on this time. I believe there actually is a festival up there, so you can make it a twofer with a nice little vacation and way to help pass some rules and regulations regarding the Republican Party of Arkansas. As I stated before, the Republican Party of Arkansas is in bad need of reform. It needs to be fixed. Again, we got to kick out the globalists in our neck of the woods. If you want to fix the nation, you got to start on a local level. You want to go after Charles Schwab and Bill Gates, you got to kick out the globalists in your backyard. But anyway, I'm going to close with one other thing here. Something I probably need to do a bit more of. If I can get it to work. Here we go. It's a trending search. It's a random reading of the Bible. It is something we need to do more of. Well, actually, far more important. What I'm talking about is fixing the nation on a political level. The focused nation did not exist without the acts of Christianity, of literal acts of God. And this is a Christian constitutional republic. And to all you leftists and libertarians and whatever you hedonist Christian bashers that are out there, this is a nation that accepts other religions. This is a Christian nation that tolerates and accepts other religions. But it is not founded on any kind of pantheism. And no, the founders are not deists. This nation would not have existed without the preaching of George Whitefield, without the Blackfoot Regiment, and without the continued benefits of Christians all throughout time. So I'm going to read here the verse, Isaiah 66, looks like it's verse 12. This is apparently a popular search for some reason. For thus saith the Lord, behold, I will extend peace to her like a river, and the glory of the Gentiles like a flowing stream. Then shall ye suck, ye shall be borne upon her sides, and be dandled upon her knees. I believe this is a prophecy of Isaiah to Israel. Israel's still under attack, thanks in part to leftists and the pedophile death cult known as Islam. And taxpayers like you, millions of dollars are gone to build mosques, goes to regimes, thanks to foreign aid, that again, our Republicans could cut the funding for, but won't. And why? We can't beat them in primaries. And why? Because we can't fix the Republican Party's acceptance, but we're starting to. We had a victory last Saturday where the Republicans establishment tried to sabotage this upcoming convention, and we defeated them. We put so much pressure that they withdrew one effort that really sabotaged what county committees could do regarding politicians. And then they tried to pass in their state committee meeting a rule that required a 2/3 vote in order to pass rule changes and platforms. And that vote was defeated. Wasn't defeated by that much, but we put enough people in that state committee to defeat that. But anyway, folks, we'd keep finding ways to get involved. And listen here next week, 12:35. I'll also try to do random broadcast if major issues come up, give discussions about that. There are also some links there. If you like what you see, you can donate and visit other organizations that are also fighting for your freedoms. Other than that, you all have a wonderful day.